back to Dropping Floats. If you're not familiar with who I am, my name is Mark, and we're going to talk about some steelhead jigs this evening here. I'll get this light down a little bit so it's not so glary. So steelhead jigs, kind of what I use. Lots of times you hear in my videos that I tie my own barbless steelhead jigs. So I'm going to kind of go over what I use and show you some, and then we're even going to tie some on my little vise here, just out of frame. So first up, we're all very familiar with the typical store-bought steelhead jig here. Something like that. Big quarter-ouncer. They're still using lead, so the presentation is very large compared to you get into some of the other styles of jigs or flies that are used in the fly world. They tend to use tungsten, which that's starting to trickle into the conventional gear market. Hasn't quite fully grasped a hold in that industry yet. They're still using kind of the old school lead, which is fine, until you want to shrink your presentation if the fish are being finicky or picky about what they're choosing to bite. And that does happen, when they won't be hitting these big jigs like this. It's a big presentation, a lot of fluff. It's got a big head on it, and sometimes you can darn near whack the fish in the face, and they have no part of it. So the jigs that I tie kind of fill a void. I also like to fish these very small jigs that I get from Raven Tackle. Right there. It's kind of hard to show, but they're a brass bead, much smaller hook. The hook size is probably about, I don't know, an 8 compared to that. That's a big old Gamakatsu. Great hook, but it's a much bigger hook compared to these little Raven jigs that I get. I've caught trout, I've got steelhead, I've caught salmon on these little guys. They work very well. And another thing you'll notice is the placement of the weight. We're on your standard store-bought jig. The weight's right there on where the eye of the hook is. So sometimes you can get into where it kind of hangs funny in the water, because however it's going to hang in the air is how it's going to hang in the water. And then one thing you'll notice about these that are really cool is the weight is out in front of the eye of the hook, so they're balanced. So they're always going to ride, pretty much totally even and flat like this, which can also aid in hookups, with the fish. If the hook's always riding like that and not doing this or something funny, the fish are going to tend to get hooked up much more consistently. Okay, so I showed a couple options of what I use. The Raven jig here, and then the very standard steelhead jig you'd get from Sportsman's Warehouse, Weimar, wherever you're buying your steelhead jigs. I do carry these at the store and Moppin in our fish department, and I do carry these awesome little smaller profile jigs. So what we're going to get in today is tying one of my favorites. I really much like this guy in fall and winter, so it's got some red deer hair here. It's got some black marabou underneath there with a little bit of razzle dazzle, and then a wrapped body. And then I'm also, as you notice, doing the pinned weight out in front of the eye, so it's going to hang very true. It's not going to get into this kind of stuff sometimes like what happens with the standard weighted jigs that are on the eye. And then another thing you're going to notice is the much smaller bead I'm running. So if you're a much more just conventional fisherman, lead, you're going to be very familiar with lead. As I'd ventured into the fly fishing industry, especially Euro nymphing, which I've started to dabble in and learn how to do, they use tungsten. Tungsten's much denser than lead, and so there's a kind of a bead that we're going to tie a jig onto. Well, these beads are lighter though. They're only about 2 grams, where a typical 1/4 ounce jig, lead jig, is going to be in that 7 gram realm. But this dense tungsten is going to sink almost as fast as that big 1/4 ounce. So your jig is still getting to depth very quickly, and your overall presentation is much smaller, which that can matter and on very pressured fisheries, or when those fish are when you're just buying to get a bite, and that definitely does happen. And sometimes going smaller, I always tend to work smaller. I'll start with kind of something maybe a little bigger. If they're not hitting it, then I'll start working my way down. And these little jigs that I tie are pretty great. I don't have a set pattern of what I'm going to show you how to tie, but I am going to show you how I pin it forward on the hook like that, and then we'll make up a pattern as we go. I've been having very good luck here lately on dark patterns, so we'll probably go ahead and tie up a dark pattern here this evening. And but a disclaimer, I'm by no means a expert in fly tying, kind of self-taught. I have a great fly shop in town that carries a lot of the different components, so I'm pretty spoiled in that realm of being able to go down and just kind of find stuff that I think looks fishy, and then come home and tie it up and go fish it. And sometimes I have great luck, and other times they don't work. So a couple of these patterns I use pretty consistently, and they work pretty awesome. So we'll probably show you how to tie. Oh, where is it? Don't have the greatest example. Oh no, there it is. I got a green one. So we're going to tie something pretty similar to this, except this kind of green body here I'm going to do in more of an egg pattern. So I'm going to do that in a red, and then I'll probably stay with some kind of black marabou, and then a little bit of a flash underneath that. Kind of stay with that kind of darkish reddish realm that's been productive here lately. I've been having great luck with dark flies and then purples, but purples with black versus purples with pink, because pink's a pretty bright color. So the first thing is hook selection. Typically when I tie these, I'm going to run either a 4 or a 6, and I like these fire hole jig hooks. They're a little bit more on the expensive side, but they're still pretty cheap. I mean, they're a fish hook. So let's go with a 4. Let's just go with a smidgen bigger. Just because the bigger jig will show up better on camera. Alright, got that unthreaded there. So like I said, fire hole, size 4, and then the 523 competition jig hooks. 36 to a package. I love this brand mainly because I love the little containers. It seems like always when I burn through a box of hooks, I always end up keeping the container for a little light fly box or something when I'm fishing light and not carrying a lot of gear. So it's kind of a little bonus, and I'm sure they do that on purpose. So fly fishermen can have a little, or fishermen can have a little bonus with the box. Okay, so we got our hook. Like I said, it's a size 4. We're going to go with the tungsten bead, since we're kind of doing that black red. Let's see what I got that will maybe go along with that. It's not really going to go along with it, but I like the color. So the bead that I'm going to go with, let's see if I can't find a way to show you here without my fat fingers blocking everything. There we go. It's kind of a black with a little bit of blue. It reminds me of like a number 4 blue fox, that kind of bluish color. And we're going to pin this out in front of the eye. So we've got our bead selection here, and I have a very unscientific method of pinning that out in front. And I do that using a finish nail. It's got a big, nice eye. So if you want to go buy these, you can get them from a hardware store. You probably won't find them in a fish shop. You want to make sure the eye of whatever finish nail you get will be big enough so when you go through, it won't slide off. So we've got the big, nice eye there. And if you're going to be fishing in salt, I would probably try to find these in stainless somewhere. These are not stainless, but they do hold up pretty well in fresh water. You know, so it's not rusting and getting all kind of nasty on your jig. I've had some that I've fished for a couple of seasons, and they're still not rusting out. But I'm also pretty aware of making sure if my box gets wet or leaving it open and letting it dry out. Don't let it leave it closed and sealed and sit there and rust. So yeah, that's how we're gonna pin it forward. It's a very non-fancy way of doing it, but it's effective. I usually wear a headlamp when I tie it just because it helps get the light exactly where I need it, but I'm not going to because I don't want to put a glare into the camera. So from here, let's go ahead and just tie it on to the hook here. And when I'm doing that, better move this camera so you guys can get a shot here. Okay. Alright, so we should be in view there. I'm going to be out of view, but that's fine. You can see what I'm doing. So we want to pin that out in front of the hook, and I kind of just line it up with the back side of the bead to the front edge of the hook of the eye. So let's see if I can get another hook and show you exactly what I'm talking about. Come on, come loose. There we go. So when we're lining this up, we're just going to lay it something like that, so you can see that edge there is kind of, you want it to be lining up with the edge of that bead. You don't want to be sucked in too much, because that kind of defeats the whole purpose of making it a balanced jig. So you want to get it out there, but you don't want to get too far where you give up, you know, holding power of that shaft on the hook shaft. So about like that looks pretty good. Okay, so get that lined up, get it stepped out there. Alright, just do a couple little wraps there, and I like to do an adjustment after okay. And let's cut some of that tail off here. Yeah, it's my little ghetto fly tying stand. It's been, I pretty much acquired it from hand-me-downs from fishermen friends that either got new stuff or they have too much stuff, and they handed it down. And this is a new bobbin. Don't know if I quite like it yet. It's got a tension adjuster here on the side. Get that tension up. That was way too soft. Okay, and that rolled around on me. The alignment, there we go. And these wraps, you want to do them pretty snug. You know, you got to be careful and not break that thin line, but you want them to be pretty snug. Alright. And do a bunch of them so it really holds good all the way down. Alright, now we're onto the hook shaft. Okay. That tension just isn't quite tight enough. So I run that base layer to the point of the hook. I kind of don't tend to go much further because I don't want a bunch of material to get built up in this part of the hook because that can interfere with it hooking the fish. So I tend to stop there. And from here I will typically tie on my tail material, which is going to be black marabou. And here you get to kind of decide how bushy you want your tail to be. It's kind of up to you. Sometimes I make them a little bushier, sometimes I leave them a little more streamlined. The thing you want to keep in mind is the more material you put on there, you are essentially going to slow down the sink rate of the jig. So a more naked jig is going to sink faster than a real fluffy, hairy jig. But I also like it to make it appealing to the fish. You know, you don't want to have enough that there's a lot of movement to entice those steelies to come and join the party, which has been pretty good here lately. A lot of the pressure's been off the river and the fish are still there, so it's great. There's some cleanup there. From here, do a couple wraps. I like to do a couple to clean that up. It really won't matter once we get the rest of the material on. So got our tail on. So from here, we kind of can make a decision on what we want to do. I think I'm going to go with kind of an unconventional method, and I'm going to go with this dyed pearl braid. It's kind of a neat material, and I like it. Sinks pretty well. It's not too solid that it doesn't absorb a bunch of water. The water moves through it pretty good because you can kind of see that it's almost like see-through. There's not a lot of thickness there. But when you wrap it up, you can make it look like a solid body, which is kind of neat. And then, so I'm going to do this up a ways, and then I'm going to leave a gap up near the bead where I can do a wrap of that real red egg material right here. That was what we'll finish the top of it is. So it's going to be kind of a tweener. It's going to be kind of a dark fly and kind of have a little bit of a dazzle razzle to it. So cut some of that off. Alright, and do a couple wraps to hold that. Cut that little tail off. And then, oh, come on. Should have known better to do a video with untested equipment. Okay, and do a nice quick wrap up. This one doesn't have to be as tight as that first one. We'll get that up to the eye here. Putting this thread down onto the shaft helps your material you're tying onto it hold, versus just trying to tie it onto a bare nail shaft or hook shaft. But let's get you in here a little closer so you can kind of see what I'm doing here. Okay, and we're just going to start doing some wraps around here. And you want to pull fairly firmly. I have found helps, and keep those wraps really tight together. And you're just trying to keep it even. I try to keep mine even. It probably really doesn't matter. It's not like the fish is going to see your jig and be like, I don't like how that's wrapped, so I'm not going to bite it. That's what kills me about some of the fly fishermen that take their fly tying so seriously. It's usually the crappiest looking flies are the ones that catch the most fish. At least in my experience, that's how it is. Maybe I just tie crappy flies. And so that's what I catch fish on. No, but in all seriousness though, like I've never had much luck with those extremely realistic looking flies that, you know, their artwork. Guys are really talented at that. And I just have never had much luck fishing those. And at some point, if you're making them so realistic with fake glue on stuff, you might as well just go pick up the bug off the ground and put it on your hook. But we can't do that. That would be bait fishing. And fly fishing isn't bait fishing. Okay, let's finish this off with just a couple wraps. Cut away that material, but I tend to do that. Stuff's pretty cheap, so I don't usually typically worry about wasting it. But I will say that I can tie 3 or 4 more trout flies with that. Alrighty, get this in there. Bam. So I got the body on there, feeling good on it. It's gonna hold. It's looking very pretty. I love that dark with that little bit of bedazzle to it. And then we're gonna get just a little bit of this red egg material. You can find it probably about any fly shop. I get mine from the Deschutes angler in town. Alright, you don't need very much because we're not going very far. But one thing I do like to do with this is I like on one end, whatever end I'm going to start the wrap with, I like to cut away some of the fluff. And the reason for that is it's there's a cord down there, a cord thread, and we just want to get that tied a couple times and then we can loop around, so it just makes it less bulky, if that makes any sense. And here we go. Let's just get that one little piece in there. And okay, do a couple wraps to make sure we know that's going to hold. Cut off that little bit of excess, but the way we're going to wrap it there, it's not really going to matter. Okay. Put this down out of the way. Let's come this way so we can come around that eye. And as I wrap this, it's because it's kind of directional. You want to pull back on the fluff and try to just get that core thread to go around. So as you go around, you're gonna constantly adjust and pull that back. I like to do a couple of wraps, get a nice big egg base, pull it snug. Probably gonna do one more, make it nice and fluffy. Make it look like a nice egg. Okay, from here, hold from the top. Get my thread here. Come down, get it lined up, pull that one nice and snug. Come around again. Ooh, I don't like this new bobbin. Just does not hold the thread tight enough, and I have it adjusted all the way. Unfortunate, because it was not the cheapest thread bobbin. But that's how it goes sometimes. Give it a nice snug pull again. Snug it. Okay, I think we're ready to do our whip finish. Which a whip finish is just a way of tying it off. Some people use their fingers to do the whip finish. I'm not that talented. I have the little whip finish tool here. And and you just kind of go around and it creates a little knot. 2, 3. I like the double whip. So that, and then we come around and do that a couple more times. Alright, one snug pull. Try not to break that fine thread. It's pretty strong, but I have done that several times. Alright, so finished product is looking pretty fine. Let's see if I can't get a way of showing it without my big clumsy fingers in the way. Alright. So there we are. That is one of my favorite jigs to fish. I like the skinny body, the big fluffy marabou tail, and feel free to, you can change it up. You know, lots of times I'll move that marabou up and then do a much bigger egg body. Kind of like this one's got that marabou attached up closer to where the egg body is. So that's why I'm way doing it. Like I did this one, I did it off the bottom of the shaft there. Well, anywho, that's one of my favorite steelhead jigs. The skinny body makes it really get the depth. You still get a lot of nice movement with that marabou. And the steelhead really love the darker colors this time of year. And on that note, here lately, you know, I've had some pretty good success out fishing. I've done some videos on it, but I don't always do a video when I fish. I try to do them as often as I can. But on the Deschutes, I've been finding the steelhead in the much softer water than you'd probably fish in the fall or late summer. You know, I wouldn't call it frog water, but it's very calm tails is where I've been finding pretty regularly. I've been finding the fish there. So that's where I would look if I was going to come here and look for a steelhead this time of year. They're here all the way up till probably about March. They start getting pretty weak and wimpy, you know, as the winter goes on, but it's still fun to go out and poke around and find them in new places and catch them. You know, out in the river is a great place to be. So, well, hopefully you enjoyed this video and you take that jig pattern and take it to the river and have success. I'll probably from time to time do a pattern video. Like I said, I'm definitely not a super expert in fly tying. It's kind of like I just have kind of just figured it out as I went. I'm like, oh, doing it that way doesn't work, or doing it this way works. And you know, if you can fish them and they hold together, then they're fine. So if they fall apart, then you didn't do something right. But like and subscribe. You know, the channel just keeps creeping up there. It'd be great to get to 500 subscribers in the next, you know, 3 to 5 months. You know, it'd obviously be fun to do it faster than that, but I'm not going to get greedy. If I can do it 3 to 5 months, get to 500, that would be pretty fantastic. Well, with that, drop me a comment to this video and share any kind of jigs or patterns that you like to fish, or anything you'd like to see me fish on the Deschutes to see if it would work. I'm always down for that. And as always, get on the river somewhere.